I've collected records for most of my life, and coming from a long line of travelling showmen, when I got married in 1982, had the opportunity to visit a lot of record shops in different towns as I travelled the fairgrounds of London, the home counties and the east of England. I loved going into record shops, finding records and chatting to the shop owners, trying to find records that I didn't have but wanted. For a month in the summer, I used to open on a fairground alongside the River Thames at Caversham near Reading. I loved going there, and because we didn't open until 6 o'clock most nights, I used to spend an inordinate amount of time buying records from two places: a second-hand shop called Serendipity, which was close to the fairground, and a record shop in the town called Pop Records. Back in the 1980s, when I used to frequent these shops, you could buy oldies from the 50s and 60s for 20p each in those shops, and because they were so cheap, I would take advantage. I remember in 1984 spending £100 on oldies singles at the Pop Record shop. Not rubbish ones either. I bought some classic singles. Some I remember buying at the time were the Mamas and Papas Creek Alley, Ricky Nelson's Travelling Man and the Supremes' The Happening. I can remember walking back to the ground with piles of records and Georgie Traylon, who was 20 years older than me, laughing, and after looking through what I'd bought, told me that I'd been born 20 years too late. But that was part of the fun, trawling through record shops, hunting down records. I could spend hours in a record shop flicking through LP covers to see what was interesting and rifling through the singles, searching for the hits that I'd missed. It was something I'd started years before. I don't remember, but I've been told often that when I was 3, Alf Silver, a Jewish man that used to sell lighting to fairgrounds, took me to a record shop and bought me the Beatles' I Want to Hold Your Hand. I was 3 at the time and already had my own record player. Ride owners on the fairgrounds knew my love of music even at that early age and were giving me records as they were replacing them with new ones. So I had a record collection of my own at a very young age. Sadly, I don't remember any of this. My older sister told me all about it. In fact, I was 6 before I remember buying my first LP. I had some birthday money for my 6th birthday at the end of July, and the Beatles released the album Revolver just a few days later, and I can remember going in and buying it. At the time, my parents had an amusement arcade in the Somerset town of Burnham-on-Sea, and the record shop I bought so many albums and singles was called Josham's. Now, Josham's was an odd little record shop because it had an add-on part to a sports shop. You had to walk through the sports shop, turn left, go through an archway and into the record shop. Buying the Revolver album was just the start for me, and over the next 10 years, it was my main record shop where I'd buy my records from. A few months after that first purchase, the first single I remember buying was Eddie Floyd's Knock on Wood. Now, we moved away from Burnham at the beginning of 1977, and from then on I was a frequent visitor to record shops all over the country. It was from Weymouth that year that I caught a train to London specifically to buy a disco 12-inch import single from a record shop, as I couldn't get it locally. It was Roy Ayers' Running Away. It wasn't the first 12-inch single I bought. That one I went to T Connections Do What You Want to Do. But the reason I remember the import was because it was £5.99. It was more expensive than the train journey there and back, which only cost £3.99. Along the way, other record shops became places of note to me. Rainbow Records in Ashford, the Music Box in Staines, Jay's Records in Cambridge, Bluebird Records in Luton, and so many more when I went on my travels. More recently, a few years back, Blackburn Records in Cambridge was another place to pick up some great bargains, but like so many other record shops, it's now gone. Like a lot of people, I don't really buy records anymore. On the odd occasion I'll spot something I want in a charity shop. Normally it's old albums that my dad once had that I hated at the time but 40 years later feel nostalgic about, and so buy them to add them to my collection for no other reason than me being nostalgic. It's all changed now, of course. Although records had a recent resurgence, they're pretty much too expensive to buy new for the most part. CDs are on their way out, and they're also found mostly at car boot sales and charity shops. I'm grateful that I was born in the time when vinyl was king, and I'd spend hours searching those record racks. Nowadays it's all MP3s and streaming. Now, don't get me wrong, I love MP3s. It's made it possible to carry thousands of songs and tunes around with me. They're convenient and it's easy to find what I'm looking for. I still buy records and CDs, but the only time that they get played is when I'm converting them to MP3, and then they just sit on the shelf. And it's all too much effort when I can just push a button and hear whatever I want. I understand that the sound isn't so rich as a record would be because of the compression, but to be honest, my hearing's not good enough to tell the difference these days. And yes, I know it's easy to just ask Alexa and you can hear what you want for pretty much nothing. But you no longer own your own music anymore. And when the company you stream from doesn't have what you want, then you just got to do without. I also realise that it's easier these days to get all of the music you want. But I feel sorry for all those people who've never had the joy of walking into a record shop and hearing a song they've never heard before that was just so good that you wanted that copy that was playing because it was the last one they had. That happened to me in October 77 in a record shop in Newbury when I heard the instrumental intro of Lenny Williams' Shoo Doo Foo Foo Ooh and told the guy behind the counter, I want that. And the hours I spent looking through record racks searching for records that I wanted. I was such a regular in the music box at Staines that the owner would keep records back that he thought I'd want to buy. And each time I went in, he'd have a pile for me to look through. And I'd listen and usually end up buying about 80% of them. Sadly, the way we buy music has changed and so many people will miss out on ordering a record before it's released and waking up on that day knowing that you're going to go and collect it like I did in 1976 when I got into Josham's and got my copy of Stevie Wonder's Songs in the Key of Life and rushed home to play that first song on side one. And knowing 20 seconds in of Love's in Need of Love Today that I was going to love that song forever. Today, that album is still my favourite album of all time, and I remember walking out of the shop with the record in the Josham's bag, and I can vividly recall how hearing that album with the free EP single and that joy that I felt. There was nothing like a record shop. The hours of joy I've had in them over the years will never be surpassed by going online and downloading an album, no matter how convenient it is. And I doubt that on a Sunday you'll be chatting to your mates as you're looking through your phone searching Spotify for something to listen to. Because when we had record shops, I'd see my mates looking for their likes and you'd see a big grin on their faces as they pulled out the record that they wanted from the racks and you asked them what it was that they'd found. Record shops. The only shops I was ever interested in. The places where I could spend hours finding the songs and albums of my life. Mind you, I'd have much more money today had I never entered those hallowed havens of musical bliss. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and feel free to share it with your friends. If you're new here and you want to subscribe, that would be great too. Just remember to hit the bell twice so that you can be notified each time that I post. And if you'd like to click up there, you can watch another of my music related videos.